La 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 la. Back to the country where the sun can shine.
The North Carolina Heritage Local Series presents
peaceful feeling as I looked at the sky, fresh and new as a tear in my eye.
Mortimer, The Life and Death of a Town.
Take me back where I can't see what God's great hands had made for me. Loving what's there in the air that I breathe makes you feel so.
For many years, the North Carolina State Department of Education has recognized the importance of studying local history in the high school. Often, however, many fail to recognize the truly rich heritage of the community in which they live.
Seeing the rivers that run back in time, they wash the earth of its dirt and its grime. The grass is green like
this slide presentation is offered in an effort to stimulate the interest of students in Caldwell County to search for their past.
They take me back where I can get high off the mountains so tall, and the touch of...
Located in the northwestern area of Caldwell County is the site of what was once the thriving town of Mortimer. A town built in the 1890s to accommodate various workers for the lumber mill located there. This mill cost $132,500 to build and was begun on July the 1st, 1900. The lumber was cut with cross-cut saws and carried to the mill by oxen. A planing mill was also constructed to dress the lumber. The mill employed 200 people or more, and at one time cut 1,000 feet of lumber per day. In 1907, the Carolina and Northwestern completed railroad tracks to Mortimer at a cost of $1 per 100 by 50 feet section of land. In 1908, the train made its first run. In 1910, a passenger car was added to the Carolina and Northwestern, and by 1911, a second train, also freight and passenger, was making a trip each day to Mortimer. The train could transport 25 to 30 passengers plus freight. It took 5 men, an engineer and fireman, a conductor, and 2 brakemen to run the train. It traveled every day except Sunday, each trip taking a little more than an hour. The train ran in winter also, but no passenger cars were attached. By 1911, Mortimer was a thriving town, its population reaching nearly 300. The town now included a general store owned by the lumber company, a school, and 2 churches, a Baptist and a Lutheran. There was also a barber shop, company doctor, a dentist, and a modern hotel. A sanitarium was once started by a man named Joe White for TB patients, but was never finished. The rocks that were to be used for this can still be seen. Then 1916 came, and the first flood, taking most of the town with it as it passed through. The Lenore News carried this report. At Mortimer, a lumber town, the home of the Ritter Lumber Company, practically the whole village was washed away. The story was not exaggerated. The lumber mill was almost completely destroyed. Several 100,000 feet of lumber was washed away along with part of the planing mill. The violent force of the water caused the brick walls of the power plant to cave in, and approximately 30 homes were carried down Wilson's Creek. The whole of the population of the town, also states the Lenore News, stood on the mountainside and watched as the houses one after another, as they slipped from their foundations and broke up in a mad rush to get down the stream. After the water receded, the extent of damage was clearly visible. Houses were gone, what was left of the lumber mill was almost completely ruined, and much of the railroad had been washed away. The force of the water had even carried a part of a steel bridge into the edge of the town. After the flood, the lumber mill operated only long enough to process the lumber which was left. It then closed its doors for the last time. In 1919, United Milling Company of Hickory bought the mill, the store, and most of the land in Mortimer. In 1921, a cotton mill was built by this company about a mile below the village. The cotton used was not grown in Mortimer, but was hauled up by the train. Because the plant was run by steam, a large water reservoir had to be built on a nearby mountaintop. The plant employed over 200 persons, mainly those from the lumber mill. It operated until 1928, when it closed because of the beginning depression. Many people were put out of work because of its closing, but relief was found when in 1933 a civilian conservation corps camp was established at Mortimer. These camps provided employment for approximately 2 million people nationwide. They were paid to do public work, such as building roads and bridges. The road stretching from Mortimer to Edgemont was built by persons employed in this CC camp. The remains of the CC camp can now be seen at what is now the Mortimer Campground, which is operated by the U.S. Forest Service. 1934 brought the opening of a hosiery mill. O.P. Lutz was the man responsible for this. He bought the old cotton mill and turned it into a hosiery mill. German-made machinery was imported and installed in the building. Even technicians from Germany were hired to run the machinery. The cost was too great, though, to transport materials to the mill. The effects of the Depression were felt also. In 1938, the mill closed down. The same year, the train made its final trip to Mortimer. Soon after, the tracks were torn up. August 13, 1940 brought the final blow to the town of Mortimer. Once again, a harsh and greatly devastating flood ripped through the town. The death of Mortimer had come. The last remnants of civilization were swept away as Wilson's Creek reached a record peak of 94 feet. With no hope of repairing the damage, the people slowly left Mortimer for other areas. Soon its population had dropped to only 42 people. 10 years later, the total was only 13, and by 1960, 3 people were its sole inhabitants. Today there are still only 3 permanent residents, but in the summer the total is greatly increased because of its seclusion and beauty. All traces of the lumber mill have disappeared, and the forests thrive once again. Parts of the old mill are still visible, but the railroad that kept it alive is gone. Only the sturdy trestles show any evidence of the trains that once were the people's main transport. The depot that stood for so long in the town of Mortimer was disassembled and moved to Frontier Village, Kentucky. Restored to its original appearance, it serves as a craft shop and museum for telegraph equipment. The Wilson's Creek Baptist Church was also disassembled and rebuilt in Maple Grove, but later caught fire and burned to the ground. The building that served as the Lutheran Church in Mortimer was moved to Maple Grove and remains today. The school was also destroyed by fire, but purposely. After being used as a place for smallpox victims during the epidemic, it was burned to the ground to prevent further spread of the disease. The hotel which once stood on the hill above where the lumber mill was remains, but time and weather have destroyed its former magnificence. Now it is only a reminder of what once was. For a time, Mortimer thrived and its life was constant. However, permanence was not its destiny. The empty valleys and mountaintops stand as a lesson to mankind as to the increasingly important need for proper urban land use planning. Many believe that history repeats itself. Could it not be more true that man only makes the same mistakes when he fails to learn from the past?
Now I know the grass will be greener over on heaven's shore, over in that beautiful city where we'll never say goodbye. I'm going home to meet my father. He's waiting at the throne. My house will be a mansion, but heaven will be my home. There is just no place like home. When I get there, no more will I roam. I know my Father is waiting with arms open wide. There is just no place like home. Coming home, never more to roam. I know my Father is waiting with arms open wide. There is just no place. There is just no place. There is just no place like home.